Hello. My name is Russ Akins. I've been in the process of discipling students for the last 50 years. And I'm going to go through a number of really important diagrams that have really helped in the discipling of others. And you'll be able to use these diagrams just as well. I'm going to include some reasons why we do them, purposes as we go along. But the first one is called the committee truth diagram. And I'll just give you a brief explanation of that. When I was at the University of Toledo, I had students that I would lead to Christ. And I remember one semester we had a particularly fruitful year. And after one semester, I think about 30 students prayed and invited Jesus Christ into their life with me. And most of them did not want to meet with me anymore after a week or two. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And so I'd ask them, and they'd say things like this: my mom is afraid I'm getting into a cult. One father called me up and asked me how long my hair was. And I probably should have said, I wish it was longer. But at any rate, if you're on our staff, the master plan staff, or in Christian work of some sort, people wonder about you. And you know what? You are not the most important person in their life. Lots of people you share Christ with and disciple will have many people who are more important than you are. And many times people believe or take in things from the most important people in their family or in their lives. So anyways, out of this came this diagram. Once I learned this diagram, I actually prayed about it, sat down in the snack bar and wrote this diagram up, thinking that God must have just given it to me in some way. And what I found was that the next semester, about the same thing happened. About 30 people prayed and invited Christ into their life. However, only one did not want to meet with me the second semester, because I showed each young Christian immediately this diagram. So hopefully this will be helpful in your thinking of getting started in disciple building. It's called the committee truth diagram. And it goes like this. Suppose there's a big committee of people, and it's all about you, and here you are. Let's just say that your name was Austin. And everybody on this committee from this side, guess who here? Here's your dad, here's your mom. Here's your three best friends from high school. Here's some of your teachers from high school. Oh man, here's all the girls. Oh, do they know you in a way that nobody else knows you? And let's say, here's your spiritual advisor. Let's say from your early days on. And everybody, and then over here, let's say this was high school, let's say this is college or other parts of life. Here's some of your friends from, let's say, your college. There's guys, we've got some girls here, we got professors here. Oh, here's a professor, a big professor here, professor there. Let's say that I'm here. Here's Russ right here, here's Russ. And what we're doing is just having a big conversation about what we believe to be most true about you. So everybody's kind of throwing in their input. I think this about Austin. I think this is what's really true about him. And here it all goes. It's really embarrassing. You wish this wasn't going on. And here's your mom. Boy, does she have something to say about you and your dad. And that's what's been going on, let's say, for 2 hours. And man, you just think, was this ever going to get over? And then out of the blue, here comes God himself. And I'll just make a triangle to represent God. And he says, I'd like to give my input on what I think about Austin. And so God just gives his input. Here it is. And it's really coming right at you there. Now, let's suppose that this is the situation, let's say. And let's say God is giving his input about you, Austin. And one of your friends from high school says, you know what, God, I just disagree with you. I just think you're wrong, God. Now, that would be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? What would you say? Would you say, I would ask Austin, what would you say about that situation? Would God really be right and most true about you, or would your friend be right and most true and God's wrong? What would you say? Well, it's kind of an interesting. They'd probably say, after thinking about it for a while, yeah, God's probably right. Well, that was just this guy up here. Hey, let's go for, these girls in high school. All three of them disagree. All three disagree with God. Now who do you think's right? And if he says, well, geez, no, God knows everything. No, God would have to know. It has to be whatever God says here. Well, hold it. Let's say your mom up here disagrees. Boy, she really disagrees with God. Well, who's right, do you think? Is God still right? Or somehow did your mother somehow supersede God in knowing what's most true about you? Okay, well, let's say in your college deal here, let's say that, here's some people that disagreed, and here's some people that disagreed, and this is how it went. And every time, God came out stronger. Well, let's suppose this happened, Austin. All the most important people in your life, up to this point, they all disagree with God. Let's suppose they take a vote and it's all 0 for God and everybody else is pro, what they want to say. Who do you think is really right, God or everybody else combined? And let's say Austin says, well, I guess God is still right. At this point, I'm going to say, why would you say that, Austin? I want to find out. I want to go after this. Why would Austin, who's a baby Christian, maybe one day old in Christ, maybe a week old in Christ, why would he still hold on to God? So let's just talk about it, and I'd ask him and let him interact with all of this. Finally, I'd ask one other question. Austin, here you are. What if you disagree with God? You disagree with him. Who do you think's still right? And many times it gets silent at that point. As they're thinking through what they know and they finally come to realize that God is still right. Now let's suppose you meet somebody who would say, nope, I'm right. Nope, my girlfriend's right. If that's the case, you can say, well, there's an interesting passage in the Bible, and it's over here in Psalms 139. Just go ahead and read the first 5 verses. And it talks about how God is intimately acquainted with us before we were ever born. He knows what we're going to say before there's ever a word on our mouth. And as they read this, they just don't understand how great God really is and how much he really knows. And I had to do that several times. But once I did that, they totally agreed whatever God said about him was correct. So, anyways, we're talking away here and like this, and this is all of God's input here. And I say, well, Austin, I just have never had God show up here at the snack bar or at the table we're sitting at and just give me this flat out, straight up input of truth about me or about you. This has never happened to you, right? God never showed up, right? So how do we know what God says here is true about us? How would we know that? And how true is it? And for example, I would take truth to the arrow here, which represents to this word called fact. Fact is something that is by definition true and always true and does not depend on anybody's opinion about whether it's true or not. For example, is the law of gravity fact? Well, of course it's fact. If you don't agree, it's okay, doesn't matter. It's still in existence and it's still going to have its effect on you whether you agree or not agree. So it's a fact. Well, another thing about a fact is it never changes. Never changes. In other words, the law of gravity worked today. Hey, is it going to work tomorrow? Do you think it's really going to work 100 years from now? It always works. That's why they call it a law. Well, If God says something that's true about you, do you think it could be taken as fact? That's always true about you. In other words, God's not going to change his mind about what he says. It's always the same. So how do we know? Where can we get information like this? And many times people say, I have no idea. And so I just do it like this. I draw an arrow here from fact to another little picture. You might know this one. This is the Bible. And I say, guess what? In the Bible, we found some information just like this. In fact, here's the first one. It's over in John, the book of John, chapter 10, starts 27 through 30. And that's my introduction to follow-up or discipleship number 1. And it's just a great illustration you can draw on a piece of paper to get interaction going with the young Christian. Now, what are we doing here? What's really going on? I want you to catch this. What I'm having to do with the young Christian within a week, don't put it off, within a week, I am teaching him how to combat and go to spiritual battle, you might say, with all the important people in his life. Most important people in his life are telling him, you need to see a priest. I think this is crazy. I had one guy at the University of Toledo. He was 6'8", freshman guy, neatest guy you can imagine. He had a 5-foot tall girlfriend, and his girlfriend said, if you meet with that missionary guy or whoever that Christian guy is again, I'm going to break up with you. Well, you know what? Here she was right here. She was more important by far than I was to this guy, even though he liked me. Well, you know what he did? He said, I just can't meet with you, Russ. I just can't. And so he never met with me again. But because his girlfriend had greater influence. So if I could just share things like this, I'm beginning to protect the baby Christian before he can even talk or walk or do much at all on his own. So that's why this is such a critical diagram, and it's the first one in the discipleship packet, if you get one of the discipleship packets. So anyways, that's that. I hope you do well with this diagram.